This is the Real Coaching Podcast. I'm Joel Filliol. We're back with Paulo Souza this week.
Hi, Joel.
I say this week, but you're the permanent second host.
Yeah, it's the Joel Filliol show with Paulo Souza.
With Paulo Souza. That said, we have got our first guest this week, real guest, Dan Lorang, Kona winning coach of Jan Frodeno, and we're going to get into that. But yeah, first off, we've had lots of feedback and questions since our polarized training episode. We're going to work through a little bit more of that in the next episode, but this week we also recorded with TRS Radio yesterday, so that was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was really fun, and yeah, we took questions there. We made bad jokes. We discussed some serious topics. It was really good.
So there was some submitted questions on Twitter. Ben made some interesting choices on which questions that he was going to actually ask.
Yeah, I was just glad, reading Twitter. I was just glad that Ben kept it PG. So that was really good. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, we even had a question from Lionel Sanders, which maybe we that topic of polarized training, maybe a follow up to that we can reach next time.
Yeah, just as a follow up, I haven't received any PayPal payments from Lionel. So Lionel, if you're listening, still out there.
Right. Maybe a donation.
A donation. # donate.
Right. So Dan Lorang. Dan is the German national coach based in Saarbrücken of the ITU squad, of the Olympic squad. And as I said before, also coaches Jan Frodeno. And I've known Dan for a while, obviously seeing him at races, and we've had a good relationship. We talk about training, we talk about other things related to performance, and we've collaborated on a few projects. So I was keen to get him on because he's definitely a real coach, and something that somebody that more people maybe should know and can learn from. So we've got that interview today. And we're gonna roll into that and then have some comments afterwards. On to the coaching and the background. I know a little bit about your background and how you got into coaching, but you want to talk a little bit about your path into coaching and how that led to you coaching elite athletes.
Yeah, I started. First of all, I played football when I was a young guy, and then I had a bad injury in the knee, so I have to stop it. And then I started to do some strength training. When I was 16 or 17 years old, and there I started to be very interested in how training works. At that point of view, only how strength training works, but I read a lot about it. I read a lot about the process. And after 2 or 3 years of this, I started my studies in Munich, and I changed my sport. I changed from strength training to cycling, and I started to get an elite cyclist until a good amateur level, or even how this was called there, semi-professional. And during this time, I had a lot of contact also with athletes. I tried to coach myself because I didn't have a coach for this moment. So I read a lot about endurance training, a lot about what you can do there. And even in our team already, some guys came to me and say, okay, can you help me with training? Can you give me some advice? And yeah, I was very interested in it. And I started with engineer studies in Munich. And then I changed my study, because I said, okay, I don't want to be an engineer. I want to do something with sports science. So I started my studies with sports science. And that was the point where I met Annie. So Annie Hawk. She was in the same study group as me. And she wanted to start with triathlon. Or she started with triathlon, but she didn't have a clue how to do it. And so we said, okay, before she will do it alone, I will try to give her some advice. We'll try to make her some training plans. Yeah, that was how I started to get involved in triathlon. And she developed from year to year, from somebody very unknown to German duathlon championship to to a girl who compete also at European Cups, who was in contact with the federation. And during this time, or during my study, I also worked in the sports scientist or in the sports medicine department of the university, and had a lot of contact with other sports, with biathlon, with skiing, with soccer, with volleyball, with different kind of sport. And during the years, I was responsible to do the diagnostic, the performance diagnostic of these sports, and to give advices to coaches. And that gives me a lot of knowledge about very different kind of sports. And the way goes on, any gets better. I got a contact with the German Federation, and I do all my training licenses to get the A degree. But before going to the federation coaching, I worked for 1.5 years for the Selfbelief test team, for a cycling team, the professional cycling team, as sports scientist. And after this, I got involved in the federation work from the German Federation, work for the country in Baden-Württemberg for 1 year, and they'll go up to the under-23 national coach, just until the elite coach that I am for the moment. So it was a step-by-step working with from age groupers to somebody who starts with high-performance sports to now the elite athletes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know the part about Anne having met her that young. I mean, was that her involvement and having her grow? That must have been a sort of key moment in your coaching of learning, like that you could move into being an elite coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even when I start to do my training degrees, I didn't work for a club. In Germany, you must work for a club to do the training degrees. But in the program where you can do this training degrees, there's a guy who calls Thomas Möller. For the moment he's our national coach for the juniors, and he saw the work that I do with Annie, and he said, okay, it doesn't matter if he makes some work in the club. I want that he make his degrees to give him the possibility sometimes to get involved in the federation. So with Annie, I got the key to access to the qualifications, and that people see in Germany, perhaps he knows how you can develop an athlete just until a degree. Because at 2011, that was the year where Annie and me, where we stopped to work together or to work close together, where she goes to Darren Smith. But the reason was that we don't have the training facilities in Germany. We were both in Munich. We didn't have a training group. I didn't have the possibility to coach her day by day because I have to do another job. I have to do my studies and all this. And we said, okay, to do the next step, she needs a professional training environment. That was the reason why she changed her complete training environment. But for me, it was the key. It was the opener to the federation.
I mean, it's interesting how many different coaches have a story like that. And for me, it was my ex-wife. And coaching her, or growing as a coach through her experiences, and then that opened doors, much like you described. And because we often, when we talk with younger coaches, development coaches, and we sort of talk about, well, what's the path? How do I get into elite coaching? And it's kind of difficult to give a suggestion in some cases, because so many of us have paths like this that, you didn't set out to, you went to uni, you didn't set out to be an elite coach, but you met different people and then doors opened and you progressed step by step, as you said.
Yeah. The only thing that I had in the head is that, for example, where I did my coaching degree, the guy who gave me the degree said, okay, what do you want to be sometime? And I said, okay, I want to be national coach from Germany. And he said to me, okay, but it's a long way to go. And I said, okay, we'll see. Mm-hmm. And so I try to, I know, okay, that's the place where I want to be. So what can I do to get there? You can't do it all on yourself. You have a lot of things that are not on your hands. The first thing is that you need an athlete who has the abilities to get at this level. You can be a good coach, but when you don't have the athletes, then it's difficult to get there. So it was, for me, a lucky case to have some an athlete like any, and also to have some good age groupers, because I have age groupers who won several titles at different championships, and also this work was seen by them, because when, for example, I do some lectures at university, I always say to the students, you have to coach people. You only learn it when you coach people. It doesn't matter who it is. Only try to coach them, to get involved in the process, to see the problems, because the problems are often the same, no matter on what level they are. And that's the way how I try to get more experience, to get more people, or to get the people know my work.
How important was the studies that you were taking, and how did that inform your coaching now? I mean, you talked about going into sports science, transferring from engineering. So was that a big impact on your coaching practice today when you reflect back?
The studies were necessary to get the degree, and I also get some good information from there. But the most information I get from studying myself, from get new stuff from science, to read books, to speak to other people, to speak to other coaches, and to coach people. I think that's where I get the most benefit of. Because the studies were not bad, they were okay, but a lot what I learned during my study, I have already read it before in the books, because I was so interested in these topics, and I was excited about everything that was linked to training, to physiology, and to all this stuff.
Was there a coach or a person that really you learned a lot from, or did you have a mentor when you were developing as a coach?
Not really. If there's a person, it's perhaps Joop Alberda. It's a coach from the Netherlands who coached the Netherlands volleyball team to the Olympics. He was our sports director at the cycling team, because he has also some successes as a sport director in different sports. And I have some good talks with him where he gives me some advice how I should be with athletes, how I should be with other coaches, that I have to be, to take me a little bit back to listen more to people, to understand, to understand them, to give them a chance to communicate with them. Because at the beginning of my coaching career, I said, okay, I want to do it like this, like this, like this, and I didn't listen very much to other people. And now I listen to them, and I can say, okay, this is good for me, I can use it, or this makes no sense to me, but I try to get the knowledge, and sometimes I say, okay, you are right, and we can go on this way. And that's what he teaches to me. Also, how can I transmit my knowledge to other people? For example, in the cycling team, once we had a meeting, and he said to me, okay, you now say to our sports directors how we will prepare the Tour de France. So I was a young sports scientist, and there were a lot of some experienced sports directors, and I was there, and I begin 1 and 2 hours and said, okay, the study said you have to do it like this, like this, like this. And I saw that nobody really believed in it, because it was so far away from the practice. And I coached it like somebody who was 2 steps higher than them. And then after the coffee break, he talks to me, okay, what you said is very good. It's always right, but you have to say it on a different way. And he gave me some advices, and then I learned how to teach people and how to bring them on my side and how to convince them about how the methods works, how the coaching work. And after this, we had very good preparations for the races, and they asked me a lot, and I have to look at the data, and they asked me questions, and it was very good working together.
I mean, it certainly sounds like you're referring to the Cervelo test team there. But it certainly sounds like that was a great experience to learn, with some very senior athletes and many experienced people, learn how to make an impact.
Yeah. It was a good. I had good lessons to do a step back, listen to people, and then use what they say to me to teach them how to do it right or better. So it was, for me, it was a very important experience. Also to learn to work in a team of experts where everybody has his right to be and everybody has his knowledge. And it was a good time there. It's,
And do you think that prepared you well for the role you had now? So you're the what is your role with German Triathlon now?
In German Triathlon, I'm responsible for the elite athletes. So the elite athletes, all the under 23 athletes who are involved in the Olympic process. That's my responsibility. I do the training programs from there. I do the planning of the year for them. Everything that is immediately linked to the training process, I'm responsible for it.
And how did you transition back into full-time triathlon from the cycling team?
How the transition was for me?
Yeah, like did you was there kind of a job opening, or I think the Cervelo test team, it ended, didn't it? And then
after the Cervelo test team, the German Federation asked me to be in Freiburg. There we have also a training base for the juniors, a national training base for the juniors, and they say to me, okay, we want you to build up there a big training base for this part of Germany, and you have 4 years to do it, and we want you to be the coach there. So that is what I did after the Cervelo test team. But I didn't do it for 4 years. I did it for 1 year, because after 1 year, the federation came to me and said, okay, we need somebody in Saarbrücken to be there at the main training base for the under 23 and the elite athletes. And so I moved to Saarbrücken and was responsible for 1 year for the under 23 athletes. And then after 1 year there, where I coached both the under 23 and the elite athletes, they give me the role of elite coach.
And what is Saarbrücken like as a training center? What sort of facilities do you have? What is the environment like there?
We have here a big swimming pool with 8 lanes of 40 meters. We can swim at every hour, so there are no limitations. We have here the first right to use the swimming pool. So there are also here the swimmers, open water swimmers, and some other sports here at the training center, but triathlon has a very high priority. We had a track, an indoor and outdoor track for running. We have two different gyms here. We have several halls to make sports activity, like, I don't know, badminton, football, or whatever you need in what you can do indoor. We have our sports medicine here at the same department. We had our physios here. So we have a very good environment here to do high performance sports. The surroundings are good for cycling, especially because it's very hilly here. So not long hills, but it's hilly. It's good for ITU racing, where you can train what you need there in this kind of race. It's for running. It's also good because it's different. You can run flat, you can run hilly, you can run on a track, you can run on different grounds. So it's a good place. The only thing where we don't have an influence on is the weather. So it's we have sometimes the problem with the weather that it rains a lot. But in the winter we have to go to the training camps. But from April on, you can train here very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've been coming from Glasgow. I can't complain too much about the weather, but I mean, you get on with it, don't you? I mean, it doesn't stop you from doing what you need to do. So when you moved there, I mean, the German team has had a lot of success over the years. I mean, obviously coming from Beijing with Jan winning the gold medal. Was Jan already training in Saarbrücken? And I guess when and how did you end up starting to work with Jan as his primary coach?
I moved to Saarbrücken 2012, so in November 2012, and I think it was the 1st or the 2nd December. I know it very well because I was here to train the under 23 coaches. Under 23 athletes, and there were only 2 athletes to coach for this moment.
Right.
So I have a lot of time to look around and to look what the elite athletes do. And then, at the 1st or 2nd December, it knocks on my door, on my office door, and Jan came in. And he said, okay, I have 2 questions. And I said, okay. And the first question was, do you think that you can coach me? That was his first. And then his second question was, if you think you can do it, please think about that I want to win Hawaii no matter when.
Right.
And that was what he said to me. And I didn't have a lot of time to think about it, because I say, okay, this is a good opportunity for me to get involved in the elite athletes, and I also have to have the possibilities to do it. And I said to him, okay, we will do it. I will coach you. We'll try this for the next year, and I think that you can win Hawaii 2015. And he say, okay, let's do it.
Good prediction then.
Yeah.
So at that time was Jan was finished racing ITU. So this was after the London Olympics, and so was that relationship, was that sort of within the remit of your national coach role, or is that something you sort of did outside of that? How did that work?
Jan continued 1 year in the ITU. In 2013, he still did some ITU races. So in this year, it was normal. He was one of my normal athletes as ITU, or as a German coach. Mm-hmm. And then after 2013, he moved to the long distance, and then it was a private project. So the federation allows me to continue coaching him. And it's a private project beside the federation, because in our federation, the long distance athlete don't have the possibility to get some support. We don't have a national team for long distance athletes or support for this, because our Olympic committee only supports Olympic distance. And so I coach Jan beside the federation.
Mm-hmm. And eventually he moved to Girona, Spain. Is that right?
Yeah, in winter he uses to train in Australia, in Noosa, and in summer already the years before he looked for some places to go where he can spend his summer, because as I already said, in Saarbrücken you have sometimes more or less rain, and he said, okay, I want to be at a place where it is warm and where we have a good training environment, and he decided to go to Girona and to stay there for the whole summer.
So that means that sort of the day-to-day environment, you don't see him as you did, previously or in 2013, as you say it. How have you found that? How has that impacted your work or your coaching?
The advantage is that I saw him for nearly 1 year, where he trains here in Saarbrücken, because during his ITU, where he did his last ITU year, he trains in the summer a lot here in Saarbrücken. So I already knew him as a coach, as an athlete. And then we started to work with some training platforms and to collect the data, because before he didn't do this. So we said, okay, if I don't see you, I have to get some data from you. I have to have some objective parameters from your training, because otherwise I can't really control what you do there. And so he is very interested in this stuff. We started to collect the data from every training session, and that's the way we work. He gets his plan every week. He puts on his data. We communicate once or twice a week on phone. For the rest, via email or the training platform. I look at his data, adjust the plan, and that's how we work from week to week.
Mm. And it seems like he's sort of built up a team around him there as well. I see different athletes coming to train with him, so he seems like somebody that is sort of capable of being in that slightly more independent environment, and obviously very successful from it.
Mm. Yeah, it's also one key for his success is his team that he built around him. First of all, he has his own physiotherapist who is there every day, who can treat him at every time in the day. What is a very important thing in the setup, because in ITU years, Jan always had some problems with some injuries, some smaller injuries, some bigger injuries. So that was we are now very lucky that we didn't have these problems. Only he had a bike crash, but he didn't have the problem to get something from training, because he has a good environment, a good support from his physiotherapist there in Girona, and even in Australia, he's with him. So, and for the rest, he has his manager who makes all the process around the sport. He has his wife who gives him a good support, and he has his bike manufacturer gives him a good support in everything that is that's concerned the bike. And so in every you call it in
all the categories of support.
Yeah, in every category he has his specialist.
Mm-hmm.
That is very important, I think. But all the informations, they come together to Jan and to me. So I know what they do. I know what are the changes. I know what are the influence of the different people, so that we have an overview over everything. That is, in my eyes, very important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This process goes very good. And even if you don't see us, it's something that works good from the first day on, I would say.
Thinking back to what you said when you first met, what met and talked about, this Kona project. What made you think that he was somebody that had the profile to win Kona?
First of all, there are different things. First of all, the success that he had. So he was the Olympic champion. Then the way how he said it. So he was convinced that he can do it, and there was no space for any doubts about this. And this is something that you give also as a coach some, I call it some magic energy. You say, okay, there's somebody who believes in his project. There's no option not to get there. And when he believes it, he feels that it's possible. And when I look at his result from the past, when I look at his body, when I look at what he did in the years before, I say, okay, the only thing what we didn't know is how will his body react on this long distance stuff. So what does the muscle structure do? Is he able to perform during 8 hours? Because sometimes you have the problem, they can perform well for 1 hour, for 2 hours, but some athletes, they will never perform 8 hours, even if they do the special training. That was a point where we didn't know if it will go in a good direction. But from all the other points, I say, okay, if somebody can do it, it will be him, because he's an exceptional athlete. It was his. You feel it when you talk with him, when you look at his training works, when you look at how many details he look at in his life in the training. It gives you the impression, or I call it like this. It's like a cycling team. You have a captain, and in this case, it's the athlete. He's the captain, and you have a team around the captain. And the team is motivated when they know that the captain can win. And with him as captain, you can win. And so everybody in this team around him is so motivated and does so much, or put so much work in it, because they all know, okay, it can. At the end, we don't talk about the top 10. We talk about winning the race.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, the belief that you talk about. I mean, we often think about what separates sort of champion athletes from others that are very good and maybe even have the sort of the same talent, the physiological talent. And, we often say, oh, well, there's a psychology to it. But, you articulate that very well. I mean, Jan believed in himself from the beginning. And you certainly, when you read his comments or you speak with him, there is a certain confidence about him. But do you think that can be trained, or is that something that is innate?
I think it's innate. You can push this a little bit. You can kick some athletes in the ass, as I said, but I think it must be innate. It must be you must have this internal motivation to get there, and I don't think that you can learn this. Perhaps you can get some confidence about when you say, okay, you get good results, you get more confidence in yourself, but the will to really achieve it, to do everything for it, and to believe in it, I think you have to be born with it.
It's interesting because it's not as common as you might think. I mean, there's certainly some athletes that maybe are overconfident at times, but this kind of self-belief and strength of belief and willingness to do it is actually not very common, is it?
No, it's no. There's it's very special, and every coach is happy if he finds an athlete who is like this. Because when you speak I am convinced that when you speak to people who are like this, you don't even have to see them in their sport. You only have to talk to them. Mm-hmm. I think, for example, or a good example, if, for example, you speak to Javier Gomez, if you speak only to him and don't know that he's a champion, you feel it. You feel, okay, this is a special person, how he speaks, how he is. I think it's also a good example. You feel it when you speak with these people.
Interesting implications for talent ID, I guess.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that we have about it. Is this a point that you can put into your criteria for talent identification? How can you look? Are you looking for these people, or what are the main characters that you need for this high performance sport?
It's an interesting thing. I often think of it as like what you might describe as the X factor. Meaning some factor that's perhaps difficult to, I mean, we're describing it, we're talking about it, but there's more to it than what we're just describing. But you know it when you see it, but also it's, perhaps is something that is not very easily quantifiable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, indeed. So what do you think the challenges or the differences as a coach going from sort of the ITU context coaching to working with Jan long distance and in the long distance world and even privately? What are the main differences in doing that kind of work?
From the training side, I would say the big difference is in ITU you sometimes have the problem. How much intensity do you need, or how much intensity can you athlete support to get the best out of him? And on the other side, on long distance, you sometimes have the problem to say, okay, what can I do with him? He's already tired. He has already done a lot of work. What will happen now if we put on there something more? How will his body react about it, or how much training is effective for the metabolism for all this? It's not so much the intensity the problem, but it's I wouldn't call it volume. It's perhaps the volume on one special day that you do. So to prepare for different kind of things in the race. So to get a feeling about this, to say, okay, also how can you how is the influence, for example, from the nutrition on the training? I think it's the influence on the long distance is even higher than on the short distance. What is concerned about training and nutrition, not about the weight and the stuff. It's very important on the ITU races, but how can you influence your training with the nutrition, for example?
I mean, you talked before about that Jan had some injuries previously in his career. Has he had less injuries since he's moved to long distance racing?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And do you think that's related to the intensity, or is it related to something else?
I think the big point is the physiotherapist on his side. Mm-hmm. But I also think that it's easier to train, to do some aerobic training to do more, to do volume than to do intensity, because this high intensity is very, very, it goes on your bones, it goes on your muscles, on your, I don't know the right expression.
It has much more impact in some respects.
On your body, mm-hmm. And you have to be more careful. It had to be very good prepared, and I think it's when you prepare your body very good on volume, it's easier to do this than to do the high intensity.
Mm. And do you think that Jan has an advantage coming from the ITU or coming from the ITU world or way of working?
I think it's an advantage to have been at this, to have been the best athlete in the world on this short distance. So that gives you, from the physiological side of view, a very good start with the long distance work, and also to live with the pressure and to live with the competition. But on the other side, I think that he is. He's now a really professional athlete because he's away from federation. He has to look for himself. He has to pay everything for himself. He has to look for his environment, look for his team. So I think on long distance you are, or in most of the cases, you are more professional athlete than you are on short distance athlete. For the moment, there's a change a little bit For example, also with what you do with the international training groups, where the people have to move from the federation to the special training groups and to invest money. So it's I think the long distance athletes, they have more, or they have to be more professional on not only in the sport but on the life beside the sport to make so that they can live it. So I think it's good for Jan. It was important to have this ITU history, to know also how to deal with different situations, to have this impacts from training. But on the other side, he learns now a lot during his long distance career.
Indeed. I mean, I wonder how many long distance athletes have the level of setup, the level of professionalism that Jan does. I think it's probably not a huge number, but certainly it seems like his approach is very, very, very good, very professional.
Yeah.
Indeed. So winning Kona as a coach, I mean, that's one of the biggest achievements that you can have in triathlon. What does that mean to you? Did you I mean, you alluded that you thought that this was possible, but having achieved that, what does it mean to you?
It means a lot to me, because it was it's as you said, it's one of the biggest wins that you can get in triathlon. But it's a little bit unreal, because it happens like a plan, and and we stand there and say, wow, it's unbelievable. But I'm happy for Jan that he did this, because he put so much energy in it. And I saw this point. I see an athlete who puts 3 years of energy into one project, who gives everything for it, and at the end of the game, he got it. And I have the chance to meet him, to have an athlete like him. I have the chance to guide him through his goal. So I'm now in the background and look at it and say, okay, Jan, well done. I'm very happy with it. In some quiet moments, I'm sitting there with my wife, and we talk about the history, we talk about this day, and it's very nice also as a young coach to live these moments. And it gives also energy for the rest of the work, even for the ITU race. It gives you energy back to see, okay, what you do there is not so bad, I think. So go on, and you have to work for it, and everything is possible.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, often coaches are kind of in the background. I mean, I think particularly the kind of discussions I'm interested in having, we sort of call it real coaching, or real coaches are often in the background. It's not about, media in the spotlight. And, it's interesting to hear, your process. And you said earlier that you were there on the ground in Kona with your family. And so that must have been extra special to be able to share it with them.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a special moment to spend even it with the family, with the people that I love the most. So it's it was a little bit unreal. It was unbelievable, but it happens. But now we see the process. We yesterday I wrote with Jan. We already talked about next season and how it will go on. So now starts the day by day work. The process restart again. The clocks are set back and we'll see what happens next year.
So you describe, equally have the motivation to go after sort of the next goal. Because, I mean, sometimes, particularly in Olympic cycles, there's often sort of a period of, we might call it post-Ironman blues, or, in Olympics, sometimes there's even a kind of a depression. And I gather that's not the case here, that you feel quite motivated and buoyed for the future and, what comes next.
Yeah, absolutely. And this event in Kona also gives me a lot of energy. Some people said, okay, how can you spend your holidays at a triathlon race where we'll have work, where we will be excited, where we'll have some stress perhaps? And I said it was the best thing to do, because I came back, I was full of energy, full of ideas, what we can do and how we can go on. And I think it's not the bad thing in the last Olympics season.
For sure. So, you must have. We know that Ironman is massive in Germany. I mean, there's some very classic events, Roth and Frankfurt and others. It's huge. What is the coaching scene like in Germany? I mean, you must have got quite a. If you didn't already have a big profile in Germany, that must have increased substantially with this win.
In Germany, you have a situation that you have a lot of commercial coaches for age groupers, for example. So when you go, when you look at the internet, you can find a lot of coaches, and you have only few coaches who to work on a short distance. So the most coaches work on long distance athletes. So most of them on age groupers, but also some on professional athletes. And there are a lot of long distance athletes in Germany. So there's a market for this. And so from my point of view, it's after this win, it's normal that you get some emails or some telephone calls. Can you coach me? Or some offers like this. But for me, it's clear that I can't coach anybody beside the federation, with the exception of Jan, because it's a deal with the board. It's a deal with the federation. It's in the contract, so it's no option for me to use this now to get a little bit more or to get some more athletes to coach on, and it's even not possible in the Olympic season. But here in Germany, you have a good market because the people, if you are a good coach, the people see this, and they also want to invest in your body. They want to invest in training because they don't have a lot, especially age groupers, they don't have a lot of time. So they want to do good trainings. They want to have good material. They want to have good, some people to give them advices. They want to do some swim courses, some running sessions, all the stuff. So you have a good market in Germany.
It's interesting when you have success, and as you describe, it's really wise not to take on too much more. I think you almost, like anything, the further you get in your career, have to get good at saying no and prioritizing and focusing. And I suppose as you're both with Jan, but also with the national team, going into Olympic year, then that's it's probably a blessing in disguise that you can't actually get too involved in a lot of these other projects, maybe until post Rio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, what's next for you? Where do you see your coaching? I suppose with a lot of us, we go in, that are working with Olympic athletes, we go in these 4-year cycles. But where do you see your coaching going? Do you think that you might evolve what you're doing post Rio, or is it really remain to be seen?
I would say it's remain to be seen. After the Olympics, you never know what happened, and for me, it's no matter what I do, there's 5 or 6 points that are very important for me. It's normally I need a clear mission, so I need what do people expect from me? What do a federation expect from me? What do athletes expect from me? I want to have the right people around me to realize the project, to have a good environment, and I have to look at my family. Is it possible to live this with the family? Is it possible to do the job, the mission with the family? And as every coach, I think it's important to have fun at work and to have 100% confidence of your environment. So there are some points that are for me very important. And no matter what I will do after the Olympics, I will have to look at that these points are all in. But for the moment, I'm only focused on the Olympics, and we'll see what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's tempting to imagine about the future, but ultimately we come back to our work as coaches is what's in front of us, what's happening today, what's happening tomorrow, and plan in the short term and keeping that focus. So, yeah. I guess finally, when we're talking a lot of what the discussions that we want to have on this podcast are about learning as coaches, and how do you keep learning? Do you have a kind of professional development that you think about, or what are the resources that you go to learn from?
The most information I get from studies, so I try to get new studies on a new sport or even on different sport. It doesn't matter if there's a link to physiology, I read it if I have the time. I said perhaps 2 hours or 3 hours a week if it's a good week, so that I invest in education. I have good contacts to different universities, so I have also access to different papers. What is for me very, very important to look what happens. If I read something, I will not immediately try it, but I look at the tendency. I look at what say other people about it, and I observe what happens, and then sometimes I will try this way. But most of the time I read studies. Sometimes I go to some congresses around the world, but to be honest, the last years it was very difficult to be away from the training center because we are so much time away, and it's sometimes difficult then to go to different to do some education and not to be at home. With the family, it's not always so easy. But I try to be at some congresses and to also talk to other coaches, to listen to other coaches, even from different sports. For example, I appreciate to hear or to read some stuff about soccer or about soccer coaches, how they deal with athletes, how they deal with all these different characters in one team. These are the main sources of education that I use.
So you're following with interest the Premier League coach changes, because there was a big German coach that's gone over to Liverpool, so you must have followed that a little bit then.
Yeah. For example, these are situations where I'm very interested in, not in what happens in the game, but only what happens in the surroundings. What do they say in the interviews? How do they react? What are the problems in which they are? What are the problems that appears there? And I find it very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think in those kind of sports, I mean, they have essentially unlimited resources. So it's interesting to see what you can do, what you can't do, what are the problems that they deal with, what are the challenges that they have, and often, as you kind of point out, they're the same. Or we can learn something from those situations.
Yeah.
Well, it's been really interesting talking to you, getting to know a little bit more about your background and your work with Jan, and congratulations again on what you've achieved. I think people will be interested to learn a little bit more about you. If people want to follow you or follow your work, what's the best way? I know you have a Twitter account, which I'll link to in the notes from this. Do you have a website? Is there any other way to follow your work, Dan?
No, for the moment not. I had a website some years ago where I was a private coach, but for the moment I'm, you can follow me on Twitter. Sometimes I post some pictures, but I don't know if it's interesting or not. but there's an easy way. If somebody is interested, he can write me or even call me. I'm not so close to it if there are some questions.
Thanks again. We can look forward to talking about another coaching topic.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joel, to get the opportunity to talk about this. And I'm very interested also in the other podcast that will follow. And it is a good idea to hear what other coaches say and to get some sort of exchange about this.
Good. So we're back. What were your impressions or the takeaways that you got from his pathway into coaching?
Something that's very familiar to me is a little bit of the European system, where starting to be a coach is something that's very organic, that kind of like is born out of your start to coach your friends, and then you're integrated into a club and you start coaching the people in the club. So in that sense, it was a path that's very similar to the way I started. But I think the message out there was just like the path is built by coaching a lot of people and doing a good job at it.
And he talked about a day that Jan came to him and said, hey, can you coach me? And by the way, I think I can win Kona, and how they developed that plan.
Yeah. I think it was a very German way of doing things, where you're like saying like, well, in 3 years we're gonna win Kona, and then it comes through, and it's amazing. I think that one of the keys to their success is that how new they are to Ironman racing, and they came to approach Ironman from more like their own perspective instead of like the traditional perspective. A lot of athletes just like, oh, I wanna do Ironman, I wanna be really good, so I'm going to get Mark Allen to coach me, and I feel that a lot of athletes have fallen into that trap of instead of looking at the problem with new eyes, they're looking at the problem with old eyes, and with things that probably were working when you were in the sport in the 90s, but probably they're not working working now. So these guys just like came at it with their own plan and their own approach, and they were like obviously successful. So that was that's very impressive. I feel that a lot of times you see athletes that are coming from a short course background, and they actually like get slower from, you know, and slower means like they are not as good as they were before, and and sometimes that has to do with going at it from a very traditional approach, from an approach that is probably is a little passé, and these guys just like come in with new eyes, a new approach, a new way of doing things, and they're, you know, tremendously successful.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes me think about the differences. You know, we have to talk about the difference between, you know, ITU racing and Ironman and long distance racing, and beyond the obvious of the format and the demands. The other differences are the environment that ITU athletes are used to. You know, might talk about that, and I know we have many times before. You know, what that kind of environment is like, a high performance environment where you seek out support in different areas, where you spend a lot of time together with your coach, other athletes. You know, you talked about that, and again, TRS podcast, go listen to it. Yesterday, you know, for example, like the swimming level, you know, you alluded to. So there's quite a difference in, you know, you might consider that an advantage to come from that kind of development environment where you're used to having daily contact with coaches, with other athletes, and everything that goes along with that.
Yeah. I think that you know, the necessary level of high performance that Jan needed to be an Olympic champion, he was able to translate it into his approach into Ironman, and I think that, you know, that's reflected into the results that he's got. I think one thing that was interesting to hear from Dan was how Jan was capable of creating an environment around him, which on one hand is not a squad environment, but on the other hand, and you know this as well, is Jan, wherever he's training, is surrounded not only by the physios or a support group, but also athletes. He almost has like almost his personal training squad that trains with him in different locations around the world. But one thing that was very interesting to hear from Dan was him talking about the total professional attitude that with which Jan approaches things, and I think that is something that a lot of long distance athletes can learn from, because a lot of the times it's I think that it's your experience, and it's also my experience. It's sometimes hard to convince athletes that are racing long course, convince them of the need to have a total commitment mentality, a total high performance mentality, and to absolutely like change their mindset towards being a total professional. And it's interesting that a lot of times when you hear, for example, some athlete I coach, this is going to sound a little bit self-serving, but when I hear some of the athletes that I coach, they say like, well, one of the things that I learned more from my exposure with the squad was just a way of doing things, and a professional way of doing things, and that can make a huge difference with performance.
The other part that was interesting that Dan described, Jan's, you might call it, psychology or his way of thinking, and compared it to other sort of champion athletes, and we asked whether that's trainable, whether that Dan said he didn't really think it was trainable. What do you think?
Yeah, I would go with that. It's definitely and this goes along a lot of discussions that we've had. Is in high performance, you're looking for very unique individuals, and when you're talking about the best in the world, you're talking about this guy or woman that is tremendously talented from a physiological point of view, but also tremendously talented from a drive mindset point of view. Which doesn't mean that these guys are not they're not machines, they're not robots. They have their challenges, and they go through periods where again, they're not robots, but at the same time there's something about their mindset that allows them to overcome the challenges that are put in front of them, and a lot can be taught. Or a lot can be learned as an athlete in terms of adjusting your mindset and increasing your mindset, or having your mindset be stronger or more resilient. That's always a good word to setbacks. But obviously that comes on top of already you're already really good at these things. One thing that high level competition is going to expose every flaw, and you have to always be on top of it.
Jan's confidence and the strength of the confidence that he had, and certainly that it's a very big factor, isn't it? And we all see, athletes who vary in this area. Some of them it's stronger innately, and they're more resilient to the setbacks and inevitable failures that you have as you develop, as you alluded to. And then there's others that it just seems very hard work to maintain that degree of confidence. And in fact, some I can reflect on that. They almost don't. They struggle to see the positives, even when they're staring them in the face. They can only see wasn't good enough, or they hold themselves to a standard that's sometimes impossibly high. And it's a really interesting mix when we're thinking about, we talked about sort of talent ID, but also working with the athletes that we have in front of us, and just the tremendous range that we see of these mental skills or qualities, and we don't want to lower the bar of we often talk about blowing smoke up the backside of athletes, basically complimenting them when they've not really done something worthy of praise, just so they feel better, because that's not good coaching, is it?
No.
And we know that happens, and it's sometimes tempting to do that. However, we want confidence to be legitimate, based on accomplishments, based on progress, based on benchmarks, and all different areas. But how do you sort of quantify that? Like, what perhaps it can't be, but when you're thinking about what are these X factors that make the champion athletes great, what other areas besides confidence do you see? I think a lot of this stuff comes to making good decisions, and we often talk about decision making, the ability for athletes to make decisions and find perspective, to be totally committed to goals, but also be able to become detached and objective about them. These qualities are also extremely important.
Yeah, good athletes make good decisions, and that's something that we've talked about so many times before, and a lot of times, it's the decisions that athletes make are going to be influencing their process tremendously. And it's not just coaching, but coaching is like a big decision for athletes. I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting that Dan describes Jan coming up to him. It didn't describe it as, oh, I went up to Jan and told him like, hey, I would like to coach you, or this is the reasons that I would like to coach you. It was Jan's decision to just like follow, to just choose his path, and he made a good decision. And obviously, if Jan got to the point, he's a really good decision maker, because if he got to the point where he was Olympic champion and now Kona winner, here's a guy that knows how to make good decisions, and something that I'm sure you stress. We stress with your athletes, and I know I've had conversations with my athletes where good decision making is very, very important. Obviously, your coach is going to be a big support factor in making those decisions. But nothing can beat when you sit down with an athlete, and the athlete, when they come up, they say like, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and you already go like, shit, this is a really good decision. So it's a lot more exciting when you see that it came from the athlete, a good decision. It wasn't like imposed. You don't have to convince them that racing 5 weeks in a row is a bad idea, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we want to thank Dan for coming on.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I really enjoyed the interview. There was a lot of really good stuff there.
So the only analysis part of the show this week, we have Bahamas, the Bahamas Island House Triathlon, which was a unique format. If we'll put the link to this as well. But we had 3 stages: a prologue, non-drafting, very short prologue, super sprint kind of distance. Then you had an enduro Olympic distance race, so 3 separate triathlons. And then on the third day, so these are separated Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then Sunday you had a non-draft sprint race going off in the reverse time order. So first across the line is the winner. What were your impressions of this race, Paulo?
I think it's great to see like something new and something like refreshing, kind of like a totally new concept of the stage racing. I think we haven't seen we haven't seen stage racing in triathlon since maybe the French Iron Tour, and that was a long time ago. And I think just the attractiveness of just showcasing some of the best triathletes in the world. I think it was very interesting, and I think it was also interesting to have a little bit of a battle between short course athletes and long course athletes, which kind of added a little bit of interest to the whole thing. So all in all, I think it was positive to have a little bit of spotlight on a new thing, on a refreshing thing. I think that a lot of what attracted a lot of people to triathlon initially, like when triathlon was just coming up, was just how new it was, and how triathlon was kind of like a radical sport back in the day, and I think that part of the sport, the excitement, the newness, the just something that's exciting to watch. I think it should be preserved with triathlon, and this event really helped that.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot of prize money on the line as well. So the winners took away $60,000, I think, and yeah, I mean I think there was $500,000 total. I mean the unfortunate part, I suppose, in a way, was because of the limitations of the island. If you followed, I was following on Periscope and on Twitter. It's quite a small place. There really wasn't that much space. So they had 10 men and 10 women. Every athlete walked away with a check. So that's very nice. And a lot of the athletes, of course, are sponsored by the Island House. So that was part of it. And I mean, it wasn't really like a fair comparison between the ITU and the long distance athletes. I mean, obviously that was some of the interest, wasn't it? But the timing of when it was and in the format was always going to favor the ITU focused athletes.
Yeah. So the shorter distances and the enduro. Overall, the whole format definitely like favors athletes like the best swimmers in the field, and that was pretty obvious. That's pretty obvious beforehand, and also looking at the results. But at the same time, I feel that the biggest strength that long course athletes have, which is their time trial cycling, was taken away by the use of road bikes, and so at the same time that long course athletes were penalized by not being the best swimmers, they were also penalized because their biggest strength was not put in place because they didn't have their time trial bikes, and so it was. I think the goal of pitting the short course athletes against the long course athletes was not totally achieved. But I'll have to confess that I don't have a better idea.
No, I mean, obviously, being on an island, I mean, having everyone bring two bikes would complicate it further, and but again, I think they should be congratulated for the format, the interesting way of doing it, I mean, maybe something that we could see more of. As you said, there was the Iron Tour some years ago that was never really particularly well publicized, but was over 5 days and was very, very tough event over 5 days. And some of this stuff, is also like the old Australian series, the beach-based series, modeled after Surf Ironman, where they had these enduro formats and a number of different formats. And, and many of the great Australian athletes came from that. And in fact, it used to be the equivalent of the French Grand Prix used to be the Australian, St. George or F1 series, and everyone used to go and do that. It was, development ground for many, many great athletes, and that doesn't exist anymore either. So it does make you think of these kind of formats. Maybe I doubt the ITU is going to get deep into this, but it'd be interesting if somebody did. Maybe this is an opportunity for
Major League
Triathlon. Maybe if it was something like this, then that might be very interesting.
Maybe with a little less money.
A little bit less money to make it sustainable.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I think it's great for the sport, and I hope that they keep doing it, not just because of the money, but because I always like when things are fresh, are new, are different, are exciting. Like I said, like I've always seen triathlon as not mainstream, and triathlon is getting more and more mainstream. I would like to keep seeing stuff like this to just shake up the sport and bring something new to the sport. So yeah, I loved it.
Good stuff. Well, we'll put the links to that in the show notes, along with links to our TRS radio show. Go listen to that.